Welcome to the Butterfly Effect. I'm Chris Horner. This is stage 3 of Tour of Suisse 2022. 177 kilometers, 4 climbs on today's stage, but the big climbs come in the middle. So at the beginning of today's stage 3, when we look at all the interviews from the sprinters like Michael Matthews and Alexander Kristoff from Intermarché, both these guys are talking about how this is the one stage that could possibly be a sprint finish. Now, there are hard climbs in the middle, but when we look at the end, with just about 18 kilometers to go, there's one little bump there at Category 3, about 6% if I remember right, but under 2 kilometers long. So, I gotta believe when I'm looking at this stage, this is definitely a stage for the sprinters if they want to do the work, right? We saw yesterday a little bit of chaos in the form of Bahrain Victorious deciding not to pull from about that 45 kilometers into the finish of yesterday's stage. So who will do the work today when stage 3 begins? Like I said, it's incredibly hot. All the riders have been complaining. We look at the start line. Riders are dousing themselves with water and already have ice packs behind their shoulder blades on their back before the race even begins. Little bit of problem with the starter pistol going off, but the riders will roll off flawlessly anyway. So start here on stage 3 of Tour of Suisse. Now, when we get into the action, it's about 70 kilometers to go. There's 6 riders up front, and there's some big-time favorites in there because it's Philippe Gilbert from Lotto, Stefan Bissinger from EF, Manuele Boaro from Astana, Quinn Simmons from Trek Segafredo, Joseph Roskopf from Human Powered Health, and Matthias Rudiman from the Suisse national team. Sorry for my pronunciation. I've seen a lot of comments there that it's Suisse, Tour of Suisse, not Tour of Swiss. So, I'll try it a little bit better in the future. Now, when we get into action, those guys got 2 minutes and about 30 seconds maximum time on today's stage. And when we go back to the peloton, who's on the front? It's Total Energy on the front. Are you kidding me? Peter Sagan's Total Energy team is riding on the front, and he's got some help back there because Intermarché, they want a field sprint today. Bahrain Victorious aren't messing around. They're not leaving any doubt. They got their full team on the front helping out with the 2 sprinter teams, and that gap is always starting to fall. Now, if you ever wondered how to bring back a group of 6 with massive power up front being led by Stefan Bissinger back there up front from EF Education, when you look at the back of the peloton, this is how you do it if you're a sprint team. No messing around. Power, fast, strung out on all the descents and the flat roads, but every time you come to the bump, the peloton slows down so your sprinter can save the energy. Now, when we look at the field back there, every time we still see the same sprinter teams, but Bike Exchange will jump on later in today's race. Up front with just under 40 kilometers to go as the time gap started getting down to about 1 minute and 30 seconds, Stefan Bissinger throws in attack for EF Education. He does his attack at the perfect moments because Quinn Simmons was pulling his water bottle out as Bissinger's flying by on the left side of the road. Quinn Simmons will dig deep from Trek Segafredo and he'll bridge up to Stefan Bissinger and take maximum KOM points on the climb here. After the climb, it groups back together and you got a group of 4 up front because Joey Roskopf and Philippe Gilbert made it back up to have a front group of 4. Problem is the peloton is being led perfectly orchestrated by the sprint teams back there with a little bit of help from Bahrain Victorious. Now up front, Bissinger is going to throw in another attack with just about 32 kilometers to go. As soon as he does, he goes over the climb solo, goes into the next left turn and barely makes the turn because the back wheel locks up. Goes into the next right. He's off on his angle for the next right. Barely makes that turn, but he is going fast. The Swiss rider is putting on a show here coming down this descent. When he comes out to the flat road, he's got a couple more obstacles that he cuts close, and then he's hard on the pedal going into TT mode for Stefan Bissinger. He'll come across today's finish line with about 25 kilometers to go, and the peloton is gaining on the group of 3 that's in between Stefan Bissinger and the Bike Exchange, Bahrain Victorious, and Intermarché driving the front with Peter Sagan always at the front of the race at this point in time. Now, can he be there at the finish? I don't know. We saw 2 difficult stages here on stage 1 and stage 2, what looked like difficult stages anyways for Peter Sagan. But today, through this first part, he's looking looking fantastic, and his team's riding the front. Stefan Bissinger hits the final obstacle here, climbing obstacle anyways, on stage 3, and he's only got about a 25-second gap. He's digging hard trying to make it over this climb. He goes over the last KOM here on stage 3 with only about a 7-10 second gap, and the Swiss rider is still throwing in risk coming down the final descent here. When we get onto the flat, long straightaway, they'll pull back Stefan Bissinger with about 11 kilometers to go, and then we're going to see attack by Ineos. It's Garrett Thomas being led out by Luke Rowe and Max Schachmann. Bora Hansgrohe, he's not caught sleeping right here because it's time bonuses up the road. Luke Rowe's doing a fantastic job. Garrett Thomas will take maximum time here at this time bonus sprint with about 10 kilometers to go. And on his wheel is going to be Max Schachmann from Bora Hansgrohe. Those guys will move up on the general classification at this point in time with 10 kilometers to go. Now, when we start getting into 8 kilometers to go, we're coming down to the final here of stage 3 of Tour of Suisse. And I hope you guys are paying attention because the last 8 kilometers of this stage is magical. When I rewind it and watched it 2 or 3 times after the stage finished, I could tell you it only got better and better because more things just kept standing out to me to talk to you guys here on the Butterfly Effect. Now it's UAE Team Emirates on the front. They're on the right side of the road. They're drilling hard because they got Mark Hirschi here, and he's riding for general classification. Hirschi, when I rewind the tape, he had to do not 1 but 2 bike changes on today's stage 3 of Tour of Suisse, and now UAE Team Emirates want to keep Mark Hirschi out of trouble. They're drilling it at the front. Then with 6.5 kilometers to go, DSM jump on the front. Now they got their whole team lined out there. It's 5 guys. They're just missing a couple. The road bumps, it twists, it narrow, it's technical, it's got islands all over the place. It is a crazy finish to today's stage 3, and that's why DSM are taking no risk with Case Bull, giving him a shot at winning here on stage 3. We go under 4.5 kilometers to go. There's a crash in the back. We'll see Quick-Step overlap the wheel with UAE Team Emirates, and that'll take out most of their squad, including Van Wilder that goes down, who is high up on the general classification. But don't worry, Remco Evenepoel's not involved in this crash. Other riders involved in the crash, though, is going to be Bora Hansgrohe, Max Schachmann, who took time bonuses on today's stage. Now he's going to lose all those, crossing the line about 40 seconds back on today's stage winner. Along in that crash was Alexei Lusenko from Astana that went down, and Pulsavivo from Intermarché, whose team has been riding throughout this stage 3. He went down, and he'll lose some time on today's stage 2. But up front, nothing is slowing down. DSM is driving it hard. The field is nervous right now. There's obstacles still to come left and right. I didn't realize how many. When we go back to that crash, though, I want to point one thing out. If you look at what caused the crash, there was the island in the center of the road. UAE Team Emirates rider tried to move left. When he did, that's how he overlapped the wheel of the Quick-Step rider. Now I want to point one other thing. When we start looking there at Bora Hansgrohe, check out the road marshal here that's sitting in the middle of the road. Now, I only seen him move his head one time to the left. When everybody was crashing in front of him because the island is coming up, that's what caused the crash. But when everybody's crashing in front of him, can you imagine sitting there, standing there, and not moving and not flinching at all as riders are going left and right side of him, and then riders are crashing directly in front of him? The marshal here did an amazing job. Now, I don't know about the organizers for finishing with an island right in the middle of the road with 4.5 kilometers to go, because that's not the only one. There's going to be more to come. With 2.5 kilometers to go on the right side of the road, it's DSM with 2 riders. It's Arndt leading out Case Bull. On Case Bull's wheel, locked in solid, it's Peter Sagan. Just behind Peter Sagan is Total Energy. What's happening here? Is Peter Sagan leading out Anthony Turgis? I don't know, but at this point in time, shortly after, I'll give you guys the answer for it. Now, on the right side of the road, it's chaos over there. Bike Exchange has 2 riders, but they don't have control of the field yet, and we'll see Nicholas Arndt move to the left. Once Nicholas Arndt's moved to the left, look at his hand come out. We'll see his hand move out to the right. That means something's coming up, but we don't know what it is at this point in time. In the very next frame, it's Peter Sagan. He knows what it is, but we can't see it. Peter Sagan swings hard right because there's a hard left coming up, and it's another island in the center of the road with a marshal standing in the center of the road on a little cobblestone island. I didn't know what they were doing. I don't see a pole there, but straight after that, Peter Sagan's making the turn on the right side of the marshal. The inside is where the field is being led through up front, and then as they pass the marshal, you figured it out. It's a roundabout they're going through, and they're going to come out right in the center. It's going to be another cobble island with a pole sticking there. All the riders just barely missed this. Hopefully nobody crashed, nobody that I saw anyways. Now up front with 2.5 kilometers to go, thereabouts anyways, it's Jumbo-Visma on the front, but they don't have their team there. Peter Sagan is still there in about third, fourth position, and we'll see him slot in just behind Jumbo-Visma. Then UAE team members will start to take the lead. Peter Sagan sitting fourth, and his sweeper is on his wheel, Anthony Turgis. Now at this point in time, I can tell what's happening. Peter Sagan's going to solo his way in, trying to win today's stage 3, and Anthony Turgis back there, his job is just to cause chaos. He's called the sweeper. That is their role. Hold the wheel of Peter Sagan and cause chaos. He is doing a fantastic job back there. Now we have a right turn coming up under 2 kilometers to go, and we'll see the peloton ride through. And there's another island as we come out, and it's Michael Matthews' bike exchange just barely missing the road marshal on the right inside of the turn there of the road marshal. He comes out, doesn't go down. Now we got a bit of a straightaway to go. We're coming under 1 kilometer to go. It's Garrett Thomas leading out. Now he's trying to lead out Tom Pidcock. Again, Peter Sagan is in the perfect position. Intermarché with Pasqualon and Alexander Kristoff are solid there, trying to get to the front, but they can't get there too soon because it's still 1K to go. 800 meters, Garrett Thomas is still on the front. And then with 600 meters to go, we're going to come into a left turn, and this is when things start getting dicey. Intermarché, Pasqualon, he's got the front. He's locked in for Intermarché. Alexander Kristoff's on his wheel. Peter Sagan, when we're coming into that and coming out, it's going to be Peter Sagan, Tom Pidcock fighting for position there. Peter Sagan's going to give a little bit of elbow to make a little bit of space, and then he's going to slot right on to Alexander Kristoff's wheel. Now behind Bike Exchange, Michael Matthews, who survived a couple island and a couple marshals by near millimeters back there. He's coming out on the left side of the road trying to move up, but guess what? It's sweeper time. It's Anthony Turgis. Time to go to work. Turgis does an amazing job. He just moves over to the left, which is pushing Michael Matthews into the wind and not allowing Michael Matthews to just accelerate fast, get up there, and get onto the wheel of Peter Sagan. So Anthony Turgis, you were absolutely beautiful at this point in time. Now there's still some more action coming up because we got another turn to come. Right there, third position, Peter Sagan in front of him. Pasqualon leading out, Alexander Kristoff behind Peter Sagan. Now that's where the action is right here on this final left turn, because we're going to see Anthony Turgis, Total Energy, the sweeper. He's coming in on the outside of Tom Pidcock, and he's going to take Tom Pidcock all the way to the fencing. I don't know how Pidcock did it, but he keeps the bike upright. And not only that, accelerates when we see the picture again, and he finds his way back up to Peter Sagan's wheel. Behind, though, guess what? Anthony Turgis is not done, because he's in front of the Movistar rider and sits up and open the gaps, which is going to force all those guys behind the Total Energy rider, Anthony Turgis' wheel. They're now going to have to accelerate. Up front, Peter Sagan, he went through this last corner with 300 meters to go. Calm as a bomb, sitting on Alexander Kristoff's wheel with about 175 meters to go. Just as they start to come up to the last little easy chicane to the finish line here, Peter Sagan starts his acceleration first. He comes by the left side of Pasqualon. On the right side, Alexander Kristoff starts his sprint, but he's a little bit behind Peter Sagan. Peter Sagan will take the lead with about 50 meters to go. Alexander Kristoff doesn't seem to have the legs as he moves from the right side of the road to the left, hoping to get a little bit of draft and speed off Peter Sagan's wheel. Behind, it's the Cofidis rider, Brian Cocard, who's coming out of nowhere and coming up the right side of the road. At the line, Peter Sagan has a fantastic stage 3 victory here at Tour de Suisse for his 17th stage victory here at Tour of Suisse. Congratulations, Peter Sagan. Second on the stage, Brian Cocard from Cofidis. Third, Alexander Kristoff, whose Intermarché team did fabulous work throughout this whole stage. And let me remind you guys, because I didn't bring it up earlier, so I'm not really reminding you, Alexander Kristoff went down with his teammate early in the stage before the cameras came on, because it was Zimmerman that was caught sleeping a little bit, Kristoff said in his interview, and his bike bounced back and crashed Alexander Kristoff lightly, he said, but he had to switch bikes, so he finished today's stage 3 on a spare bike, is what he was saying in the interview. His interview was magical, though, because he gave great praise to Peter Sagan. When the reporter asked him, how does it feel to get beat by Peter Sagan, Alexander Kristoff said, hey, it's not new to me. It's been happening my whole career. The guy is fantastic. Now with the Peter Sagan interview, the reporter tells Peter Sagan, I guess the peloton now know you're back. Peter Sagan looks up, gives a little smirk and smiles and says, well, it's nice to be back. Yes, it is Peter Sagan. Now, for me personally, this is a magical moment because now we know there's hope come July that we're going to see that battle between Peter Sagan, Matthew van der Poel, Wout van Aert, and possibly Julian Alaphilippe. Those are the four I always wanted to see in the classics, and now they're back. Now, I'm going to have to go to church and do some repenting because throughout all this time on the butterfly effect, any bad moment Peter Sagan has had, whether if it was COVID, health issues, knee problems, crashes by Caleb Ewan in the Tour de France, or the officials wrongly relegating him out of a chance at the green jersey at the Tour de France when he was battling against Wout van Aert in that sprint stage with a clear open lane and Wout van Aert moved over on him. All that time, I have backed Peter Sagan all the way up till yesterday. Now, yesterday, the cracks in the Horner hair belief of Peter Sagan started to appear. I told you guys, I didn't know if he could make it. When you look at yesterday's stage 2 and it's Alpecin Phoenix on the front with Jimmy Johnson pulling and Peter Sagan's coming out the back, I could forgive stage 1 because that was a hard stage on stage 1. Peter Sagan had not had any racing. He'd been at Park City, Utah training here in the U.S. and then flown straight back over there. So stage 1 I could forgive. Stage 2 though didn't look like a difficult stage to stay there and he popped off and I cracked. I am sorry, Peter Sagan. I never should have. For your 17th stage win here at Tour de Suisse, and I believe the commentators said that it was your 120th victory here in your career. Congratulations. You're back. You never left. You have stage wins at the Giro, points jerseys at the Giro. This year you've been sick. You went to the U.S. to train. Now you're back. God bless the cycling gods right here. Peter Sagan is back, and we get to see this big battle amongst the big giants when we get to July for the Tour de France. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. We got 2 more big stages coming up, which should be ideal for breakaways to make it to the finish. And then we're going to see the big GC battle on the next 2 stages here at Tour of Suisse, followed by the individual time trial. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you real soon.